Okay, let's dive into the mind of a man who basically saw our world 500 years before it even happened. We all know Leonardo da Vinci, right? The artist. But what if I told you his paintings, they're just the tip of the iceberg, that his real genius was something else entirely? To really get what I'm talking about, we've got to jump forward in time way after he lived. So look at this number, $30,802,500. That is a huge number. And no, that's not for a mansion or some fancy private jet. That's the price someone paid for one single 500-year-old notebook. Yep, you heard that right. Back in 1994, Bill Gates dropped over 30 million bucks on a notebook written by Leonardo da Vinci. And the big question is, why? I mean, why would he do that? Well, the answer to that question peels back the curtain on Leonardo's real genius, something that goes way, way beyond the Mona Lisa's famous smile. Okay, so this notebook, it's called the Codex Leicester, and it is not full of sketches for his next painting. Nope. It's 72 pages, just jam-packed with scientific theories, totally wild inventions, and these super deep questions about how the world works. It's basically a direct portal into Leonardo's other life, the one that, you could argue, really made him a genius. You see, this is the part we usually get wrong about Leonardo. We think of him as this amazing artist, and he was. But his real superpower? It was this crazy, insatiable curiosity. He just didn't see any lines between art and science and nature. For him, it was all connected. He didn't just want to paint a pretty picture of the world. He wanted to take it apart and figure out how it ticked. He was like the ultimate polymath. So how does a mind like that even happen? Where does it come from? Well, to figure that out, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. Turns out, a few little quirks of fate basically set the stage perfectly for his genius to just explode. Okay, get this. Leonardo was born an illegitimate son. And that, weirdly enough, might have been a huge lucky break for him. It meant he didn't have to follow in his dad's footsteps and become a notary. He was free to do his own thing, and his thing led him to an apprenticeship in Florence, in a workshop that was this amazing mix of art and engineering. So he wasn't just learning to paint, he was learning chemistry, how to work with metal, mechanics, and that combination, that fusion, became the absolute foundation for everything he did later on. And that whole art meets engineering thing, man, it just exploded inside his notebooks. We're talking thousands and thousands of pages filled with designs for machines that were, and I mean this literally, centuries ahead of their time. Okay, for example, look at his design for an armored vehicle. He came up with this thing 400 years before the first tank ever saw a battlefield. And the details are just mind-blowing. The whole thing was shaped like a turtle shell. And he even figured out that slanting the armor would make it better at deflecting cannonballs. That was a completely game-changing idea for the 1400s. And then there's this, the aerial screw. I mean, come on, that is basically the granddaddy of the modern helicopter. And he wasn't just doodling here. He knew that friction on the rotating part would be a huge issue, so he designed a kind of early ball bearing to fix it. This wasn't just some fantasy, this was real hardcore engineering. And if you're wondering just how good his ideas were, check this out. In the year 2000, a guy built a parachute using only Leonardo's 500-year-old design. He even used materials that would have been around back then. He took it up to 10,000 feet and jumped. And guess what? It worked perfectly. He actually said the ride down was smoother than a modern parachute. Unbelievable. So you gotta ask yourself, how did one guy come up with all of this stuff? What was his mental operating system? What allowed him to see things nobody else could even imagine? It wasn't just what he thought of, it was how he thought. There's a word for someone like Leonardo, polymath, and his range of expertise was just staggering. I mean, he wasn't just an artist, he was an anatomist, an architect, a botanist, an engineer, a map maker, a geologist, a musician. Seriously, the list just keeps going. And for him, all these different fields weren't separate boxes. It was all one big interconnected puzzle he was trying to solve. His notebooks are full of these to-do lists, but they're not like ours, buy milk, do laundry. His lists were more like, why is the sky blue? Describe the tongue of a woodpecker. How do birds fly? These were curiosity lists. They just showed this mind that was constantly poking and prodding at the world, questioning everything from the gigantic to the super tiny. He just had this unstoppable need to know. And he wasn't just randomly curious. He actually had a system, a really powerful 3-step method for figuring anything out. Step 1, look at something and describe it in almost painful detail. Step 2, figure out how that thing affects everything else around it. And step 3, cook up an experiment to see if your ideas are right. Think about that. He was basically using the scientific method hundreds of years before anyone else even gave it a name. But, and this is a really big but, here's where the story takes a tragic turn. For all of this incredible genius, for all these ideas that could have changed the world, almost all of his greatest scientific work was nearly lost forever. Across his life, it's estimated that Leonardo created something like 13,000 pages of notes and drawings. I mean, that's a massive library of knowledge, just brimming with discoveries that were light years ahead of their time. But here's the kicker. He never published a single page of it. I mean, just look at some of this stuff. He figured out how to map the inside of the brain by injecting it with hot wax to make a perfect cast, a technique nobody else used for another 200 years. He built a glass model of a heart just to see how the valves worked and how blood really flows through it, and he made discoveries that scientists didn't confirm until the late 1900s. Because he kept it all to himself, the world literally had to wait for centuries to rediscover things he already figured out. And you can almost feel the sadness of it in his own words. He once wrote, "While I thought that I was learning how to live, I have been learning how to die." It's like he knew he was running out of time, with all this incredible knowledge locked away in his notebooks just for him. So let's circle all the way back to the beginning, back to that $30 million notebook. What makes it so valuable? What's it really worth? Well, what Bill Gates bought wasn't just a pile of old paper. He bought a physical piece of a way of thinking. See, Leonardo's true legacy, it's not the Mona Lisa, it's not the tank, it's not any single thing. It's the example of his mind at work. That nonstop drive to look closely, to ask why, and to see how everything fits together. What he really teaches us is that the most powerful tool we have isn't our technology or our money. It's just plain old curiosity. The simple act of asking questions. That is the lesson of Leonardo's life. It's a challenge, really. A challenge to all of us to look at the world around us and not just see what's there, but to imagine what could be. So, I guess the only thing left to ask is, what questions are you going to ask today?